And now I'd like to introduce Jennifer Wright.
Thank you, all of you, for being here today. And I want to welcome those of you who are on Zoom as well. I want to thank Elaine for inviting me, and for Dan for helping put this together, and for Susan for the beautiful music. I want to point out these roses we have here today. These are the sign of the great feminine, little yellow ones in there as well. And I'm wearing red. This is the color of the feminine. Thank you for listening to my message today on the divine feminine. I believe this supports the message that Barbara has had, our theme of connection this month. Today, more than any time in human history, we are seeing a rebirth of a unity consciousness with a desire to write a new destiny for the human race. This rebirth of ancient wisdom with modern-day mysticism is being brought about by the quest to bring deeper meaning into a world that appears to have lost it. A fast-paced, materialistic world that seems to be obsessed with violence, death, and the disregard for nature. We feel the need for balance in our daily lives, and we see the crisis in the Mother Earth herself. In the midst of this chaos, a new kind of human being is emerging. These human beings are people who yearn to create the type of world where war, pollution, and struggle are a thing of the past. How many of you think that you are one of those people? This is the move toward the feminine, the softer side of ourselves, sorry. For me, this journey to the feminine has been one that I was directed to all of my life, really, but in all of my medicine journeys, the spirit of the Great Mother, the divine feminine, has come in. I have been shown, as I've tried to understand my own life, the patriarchal suffering and damage for myself and for our world. I was told this was not about men, but it's about our cultural system. So my message today is her voice speaking through me. So I could talk for hours about this, but I would like to look at first our history and how we've come to be where we are in our culture. So the first step is to understand our history. Was it always this way? Is this our human nature to be violent like we've been told? No, it's not. In the 60s, the archaeological digs revealed a world that was matristic, meaning no dominance of male and female, and no weapons were found. This culture existed, we know, between 6500 and 3000 BC. And it's when a time when cultures understood that everything started with the mother, and all life was a result of the mother. Worshipping the goddess was the first theology of our ancestors, which occurred in all corners of the world. Our early ancestors understood that the feminine gave us life. What happened? The first archaeological finds that the demise of the great goddess began in Turkey and Greece around 3,600 years ago. We see the evidence that this Mediterranean culture was swept down by northern invaders with brutal storm gods and violent weapons. These seafaring invaders inspired what we now know as Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. By the dawn of the Iron Age, the mythology of the goddess mother had been suppressed by these patriarchal warriors. These cultures supported a paradigm of oppression and conquest and the separation of man from nature. The killing of others became the sign of the superiority, and as the powers of the goddesses waned, women became the possession of men, sons inherited the wealth of the fathers, and women could be sold into slavery. These ideas influenced the Old Testament. Note that the Old Testament was written between 1200 and 300 BC, long after Moses. Research shows that the Old Testament was manipulated heavily by priests of the time for political reasons. Archaeologists show that the writings of the Old Testament do not reflect the archaeological finds on monotheism, the one male god. Female goddesses were still worshipped in many cultures. So monotheism, the one male god, was not universal, and the Old Testament was written for control. We find that when cultures move from oral tradition, that of the female, to the written, which is the masculine, the word becomes the law. And those of us who've been raised in one of the faiths of Christianity or Judaism have been told that these texts were the word of the God. These beliefs of male supremacy, war, violence have impacted our culture in very detrimental ways. This is the second break of the feminine, which is the written of the Old Testament, with its Genesis story of the evil Eve and the one male God. So I'm now going to fast forward to the time of Jesus. After Jesus' death, it's known that many groups interpreted the words of Jesus in their own way. The early Christian teachers were Peter, Mark, and Mary Magdalene. A significant number of these early Christians were known as Gnostics. How did they, who knew Jesus intimately, interpret the teachings of Jesus? Gnostics believe that the origin of everything rests firmly in the supreme first principle of the feminine divinity. They believed in a divine self, which when we achieve our highest state of being, manifests the qualities of love, compassion, mercy, truth, and grace. These are all yin and female qualities. The evidence of these beliefs were found in the Dead Sea Scrolls in 1945, have been proven to be the earliest biblical texts. The Gnostics also believed in reincarnation and that connection to spirit was within us and not in a priest. In the 300 years that followed the crucifixion, there was another faction with Apostle Paul as the head, which saw a different Christianity, one with the priests as the intermediaries to a male god, following the lead of the Old Testament. In 350 AD, this faction undermined the writing of what would become the New Testament, and all these early Gnostic texts were removed, and those who did not believe this Old Testament were called heretics. Interesting that the books written by Paul, who never knew Jesus, were kept, and these writings affect us today about the evil nature of women and homosexuality, which were all based on Paul's interpretations. This New Testament is the basis of what we have today in Christianity, and recognize it, like the Old Testament, was written to control the people. To me, this is the third break in the divine feminine, at least in Western society. The written word becomes the law of the land, and all else is forgotten. The word is then accepted as the truth generation after generation. So now, since we're talking about the feminine, I'm going to stop here and discuss this disciple, Mary Magdalene. Who was Mary Magdalene? Many believe she was a powerful priestess in the Isis tradition of Egypt. According to the esoteric teachings of Egypt, it is believed that Isis was the divine feminine of our planet and perhaps the universe. There were mystery schools and sisterhoods within this tradition that we believe not only Mary Magdalene was a part of, but Jesus' mother Mary as well. The Dead Sea Scrolls that I referred to earlier contain her gospel, as well as the gospel of Thomas and of John, which supports what follows. Jesus and Mary were a married couple, intimate couple. We know this from analyzing the Bible stories we know and the customs of the time. For example, we are familiar with the anointing of Jesus by Mary, but did you know in Hebrew culture, a woman could never anoint anyone but her husband? At the crucifixion, Mary approached the tomb and asked for Jesus' body. This is something that only a mother or a wife could do. Reading the gospel of the beloved companion and of Thomas and of John, you see clearly that Mary was the favored of the disciples. Jesus taught her the secrets of enlightenment and said to her, "Only you understand my teachings, as you were known before you came into this world." The disciples Peter and Paul resented Mary and her relationship to Jesus. When they complained to Jesus, he told them she was his beloved and chosen disciple. So what does all this mean to the issue of the divine feminine that we're talking about? Jesus spoke of the sacred marriage as the union of the bride and bridegroom, symbols of the illuminated male and female energies. The aim of this intermarriage is to awaken and balance both hemispheres of our brain, the male and female aspects of us all. I believe that Mary's potential was never realized due to the stronghold of the patriarchy that she came to do away with. One of the lies that has been told through the ages is that Jesus was poor and that Mary was a prostitute. Nothing could be further from the truth. Jesus was from the house of David and Mary the house of Benjamin. This was a powerful union that was fulfilling the prophecy of the time. Because of this, Mary was forced to flee the country, as she would have been sought by Herod if he knew of this marriage. There is evidence she fled to Lazarus, to Egypt, and then to southern France, which was then Gaul and included parts of northern Spain. While this might sound outlandish, the evidence is that in the Pyrenees along the border of these two countries, there are 94 churches and monuments dedicated to Mary Magdalene in France and in 64 in the north of Spain. You will find that nowhere else on the planet. Some of you may know that I went to southern France this year in October to visit and be immersed in the churches and the monuments of Mary Magdalene. I visited the church where her supposed remains were, the cave where she was to have lived, and other sacred sites. I joined hundreds of pilgriming women like myself, along with some men like my wonderful husband, on this pilgrimage. What I found was amazing. The presence of Mary Magdalene was everywhere, in the markets and the shops and the villages. It was truly a part of the culture, and I believe most of the world is not even aware of that. While Rome attempted to wipe out all the feminine with the New Testament, these teachings of Mary were carried by the Cathars in France. During the Crusades, which we know burned hundreds and thousands of so-called witches throughout Europe, 200,000 Cathars were slaughtered or burned at the stake in southern France for refusing to take on the beliefs of the Roman Catholic Church. In 2026, at Montségur, the last stronghold of 200 burned themselves at the stake after a long siege, rather than take on the beliefs of the Roman Catholic Church. I walked this path of the Cathars at Montségur, which was an arduous climb. The woman who sold us the tickets looked at me and said, "If you don't make it to the top, I'll give you your money back." And I said, "You know what? I'm going to make it to the top." And it was hard, and I had to do it with my husband's help. It was very steep, and I think it was 2 miles up. The rocks were worn from the wear and tear on those rocks, but I made it to the top. I was moved to weeping, as it came to me that these people were willing to be burned at the stake for their beliefs. They could have accepted Catholicism and avoided the slaughter, and this is supported by the Vatican archives. So this was their choice. So stop and consider that they were willing to die rather than accept a belief system of an external male god, a culture of violence, separation from nature, and subjugation of women and the divine feminine. Stop and let that sink in. What are we willing today to sacrifice to have something different? I believe that Jesus, along with Mary Magdalene, came into this planet to show us a different way, to show us our true human nature, that we are not warring and killing naturally. It has nothing to do with religion. Unfortunately, due to the politics of the time, we have lost their message. However, it's never really been lost. We just have to invite her back. Whether we like it or not, we carry this myth of female evil in our very DNA. And all of my ancestral work has shown this to be true. And we need to recognize that we carry the trauma and the values of our ancestors from thousands of years. The awareness of the truth is the first step. So I ask you, what do we need to do to bring back this divine feminine into our society? This is not about women's rights. What I've seen from women's rights has been that we as women learn to be like men, and that's not what this is about. It's about bringing the qualities of love, compassion, mercy, forgiveness, and the integration of our right and left hemispheres that Jesus and Mary taught. And I'm here today to try to raise your awareness and consciousness of that. If we had the values of love, compassion, mercy, and forgiveness in our culture and honored those, then we would pay and honor the men and women who care for our children, who teach our children, who work in nursing homes and hospitals, in foster care at a wage that we pay our bankers and our engineers. We would not have a for-profit prison system. We would negotiate with nations intentionally before firing a shot. We would not have our situation that we have on this planet right now. We would care for our environment. We wouldn't have a profit healthcare system and a for-profit big ag for our food. It's also not about politics. We have been in war my entire life, and I'm 74 years old. And I have seen the changing of the guard of the White House many, many times. It's not about that. It's about it starts with us individually. It starts in our communities and what we do. It's about compassion, mercy, grace, forgiveness, and love. And we are changing, and this is not about gloom and doom. I see it in a change in the young people and what they are willing to accept. And most of us here are elders to those young people. And it's our role to support and foster these changes and then in our community. We have a long way to go. I'd like to stop at this point. I want to point out that I have some books in the down in the coffee room of all my resources that I have used. Please feel free to take a look at those books. I also, for those of you who are into the woo, I make a wild rose elixir, and a drop of that under your tongue. If you want that downstairs, you're welcome. Just check with me. But now I'd like to stop and have some reflection from you about this message, because you can listen to my passion and walk out of here and it doesn't mean a thing. But take some time to reflect, and I'd like to hear what some of you think about this. And thank you for your time.